when you hear that sharp Southern accent, when you catch the humor, the blunt honesty, the no-nonsense tone, you might think you already know John Kennedy. But the real story? It's far deeper than sound bites and Senate speeches. John Neely Kennedy isn't just a politician. He's a product of Louisiana, its land, its culture, its contradictions, and its long memory. Born in the Deep South, Kennedy's upbringing was shaped by discipline, tradition, and a strong belief in education. Before the cameras, before the Senate floor, before the sharp one-liners that made him nationally recognizable, John Kennedy was simply a young man learning how power actually works. Growing up in Louisiana meant understanding something early. People remember who you are. They remember your family. They remember your word. Reputation isn't built online. It's built over decades. Kennedy's upbringing emphasized structure. Education wasn't optional. Preparation wasn't negotiable. Excuses didn't earn respect. That mindset would later define his political style. He pursued education aggressively, not casually. Degrees from elite institutions, legal training that sharpened his precision, economic understanding that shaped his fiscal focus. But credentials alone don't create influence. Early in his career, Kennedy faced a reality most politicians won't admit. Power doesn't come from intelligence alone. It comes from trust, and trust is slow. In Louisiana politics, nothing is handed to outsiders. You earn acceptance by listening longer than you speak, by showing up when it's inconvenient, by staying when others leave. Kennedy learned patience. His early professional years weren't glamorous. Legal work, policy research, behind-the-scenes roles. No headlines, no applause, just groundwork. But those years taught him something crucial. If you understand the system deeply enough, you don't need to shout. You just need to speak at the right moment. Slowly, his reputation grew. Not as a showman, not as a celebrity, but as someone who knew the numbers, knew the law, knew how consequences ripple. This quiet credibility opened doors. Appointments, advisory roles, positions of increasing responsibility, each step pulling him closer to the center of influence. Yet even as his career advanced, Kennedy stayed grounded in something simple. Louisiana land, Louisiana people, Louisiana priorities. Politics to him was never abstract. It was about ownership. Who owns the land? Who pays the taxes? Who benefits and who doesn't? These questions would later shape his financial philosophy and public persona. By the time John Kennedy stepped into larger political arenas, he wasn't experimenting. He was executing carefully, deliberately, with long memory. But stepping into visibility brings new pressure. Public scrutiny, political enemies, national attention, and with it, real wealth, real property, and real influence. In the next part, we step into John Kennedy's financial life, his approach to wealth, and how Southern values shape the way he lives, not just the way he speaks. In Louisiana, wealth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it sits quietly behind fences, spreads across acres, and waits patiently. John Kennedy's approach to wealth reflects exactly that mindset. Measured, private, intentional, not built on flash, but on stability. Unlike celebrities who measure success in visibility, Kennedy measures it in control. Control over land, control over decisions, control over independence. Land ownership plays a central role in his life. In the South, land isn't just property. It's leverage, it's heritage, it's insurance against uncertainty. Owning land means something different in Louisiana politics. It signals permanence. It signals commitment. It says, I'm not passing through. Kennedy's real estate holdings aren't about luxury mansions or coastal excess. They're practical, strategic, tied to long-term value. Property that appreciates slowly but reliably. His financial philosophy mirrors his political one. Spend cautiously, borrow conservatively, avoid unnecessary risk. This is old school Southern financial thinking, the kind passed down quietly. Kennedy doesn't chase trends. He watches cycles, booms, busts, recoveries, and he positions himself accordingly. That approach has allowed him to accumulate wealth without attracting spectacle. No flashy social media posts, no public displays of excess, just steady accumulation. As his political influence grew, so did his financial footprint. Government salary, book income, speaking engagements, long-standing investments, all carefully layered. But even with financial security, Kennedy maintains a restrained lifestyle. No image obsession, no celebrity culture. He lives comfortably, not extravagantly. In Louisiana, that restraint earns respect. It tells people you haven't forgotten where you come from. That wealth didn't change your priorities. Kennedy's daily life reflects structure. Early mornings, dense reading, Policy briefings, constituent concerns, not luxury schedules, working schedules. This consistency has become part of his identity. Predictable in discipline, unpredictable in rhetoric. A combination that keeps both supporters and critics watching. But with wealth and land comes scrutiny, questions about influence, questions about power, questions about whose interests are being served, and that scrutiny intensifies as his national profile grows. In the next part, we step into John Kennedy's public power, his role in Southern politics, his media presence, and how his private lifestyle shapes his public voice. Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits for the microphone. As John Kennedy stepped onto the national stage, his voice began to travel far beyond Louisiana. What once echoed through local rooms now reached millions. Television, national hearings, political debates watched coast to coast. Kennedy's speaking style became instantly recognizable, sharp, Southern, deliberately plain spoken. He didn't speak like Washington expected him to, and that was exactly the point. In a city obsessed with polish, Kennedy leaned into contrast, folksy phrases, dry humor, direct accusations. Supporters saw authenticity, a man who sounded like home, a man who spoke without scripts, a man who challenged elites using their own rules. Critics saw something else, calculated rhetoric, performative moments, sound bites designed for viral reach. But one thing was undeniable. People listened. Kennedy understood media power, not by chasing attention, but by using it precisely. He waited, then spoke when cameras were rolling. His influence inside the Senate grew quietly. Committee roles, policy negotiations, behind-the-scenes leverage, no drama, just positioning. Kennedy's voting record reflected his financial philosophy, fiscal restraint, government accountability, skepticism toward unchecked spending, themes that resonated strongly back home. In Louisiana, that message landed. People who worked the land, owned small businesses, balanced family budgets. They recognized the language of limits, yet with visibility came pressure. National critics, political opposition, relentless media analysis. Every phrase dissected, every joke reframed. Kennedy responded the same way he always had, by staying consistent. He didn't reinvent himself. He doubled down. Consistency became his armor. When critics attacked his tone, he defended his message. When controversy surfaced, he redirected to policy. That approach strengthened his standing among supporters. They saw resilience. They saw confidence. They saw someone unafraid of backlash. But power always creates distance between public figure and private man, between influence and solitude. And as his career reached maturity, the question shifted. Not how loud his voice was, but how he lived when the cameras turned off. In the final part, we step into John Kennedy's private world, daily life, personal values, family balance, and what legacy truly means to him. When the cameras shut off, when the Senate floor empties, when the headlines move on, John Kennedy returns to something far simpler. Not applause, not controversy, routine, structure, silence. Away from Washington, Kennedy's private life is deliberately understated. No spectacle, no public indulgence. Reading and reflection. He values distance from noise because influence lasts longer when it's protected. Privacy, for him, isn't secrecy, it's discipline. His home life mirrors his public philosophy. Stable, organized, grounded. There's comfort, but no excess. In Louisiana culture, this matters. People respect those who don't forget their scale, who don't live above their neighbors. Kennedy's connection to land remains symbolic. Land doesn't argue, it doesn't trend, it doesn't flatter, it demands patience. That patience defines his legacy more than any speech. Decades of consistency, a voice shaped by place, a life built on limits. Supporters see a guardian of fiscal caution, someone who questions power, even when it's popular. Critics see rigidity, but both sides acknowledge something rare, predictability. In an era of reinvention, John Kennedy stayed recognizable. Same accent, same priorities, same measured lifestyle. His story isn't about sudden wealth, it's about earned stability. Not about fame, but permanence. And in Louisiana, permanence is power.